I would like to move us forward to the second question that we had, the second practice question, which is actually going to dive a little bit deeper on something that we already touched upon, and in particular the scalability element that of course we are all interested about, amplifying our impact with the system change approach, and also the sustainability one. And these are both, of course, very well interrelated. And at Tostan, we are already doing our approach at scale, but I think the next exciting stage of life is about really exploring those two components together and make sure that we bring it to the next level. And so I would like to ask you a question about these two components together, and actually how do social norms and system of beliefs shift actually to allow for sustainably scale system change. Yeah, so over to you, Sanjay, first, please.
Sure. As we are experiencing in our work at scale in education, healthcare, different sectors, we are realizing that when we come to this question of belief and norms changing, at the root of this are habits of people. Habits of different actors, habits of different participants of the society. And many of these habits have gotten coded into policies, regulations, norms, processes. And out of reflex, people do many things on a habitual basis. And one of the things that we realized as we were working in early days in education and then subsequently in the urban space and then into livelihoods is finding what is that +1 change is a very important quest. What is that one thing that has a massive shift in habits? I'll give you an example. When we were working in education, we were going through these multiple pathways. Should we build great content? Should we put devices into hands of people? Should we look at interactive things, gamification, all the good stuff? And at the same time, we had a question, how do you make it work for 200 million people, right? So it is not easy to think of a very sophisticated answer and then on the same side of the brain, you say, how do we do it for 200 million people? And through this entire journey, the team, an amazing team led by Shankar, who's the CEO of X-Step Foundation, they came to a very interesting conclusion that the habit of the education system every day was come to the class, open the textbook and read, or make the children read, or just write this down on the blackboard. And keep doing that again and again and again across 1.5 million schools by 13 million teachers. Keep doing that. And so we said, we have to find a place in that habit. And so we did some very interesting work on inserting QR codes into text. India prints, by the way, about 2 billion textbooks a year. So working with the government, an amazing run with the ministry and the education system to actually insert QR codes and change that moment. So I come into the class, I open the textbook, I see a QR code and my routine changes. And what is this? I scan, I start learning. And that +1 change slowly starts bubbling out and changes so many things around it, right? It's like once humanity discovered the GPS, that was a one thing change. It answered only one question, where are you, right? And then after that question, if you could answer that question, then you could answer many questions beyond it, right? So where do you want to go? And Google Maps were born. When do you want to get at what price? And Uber gets born. So it's the same thing. We're looking at education saying, what are you learning today? If I can answer that for 200 million children, then I can figure out what's the next question to answer. And so this aspect of changing beliefs, norms, sometimes is rooted in our routines and our habits. And we talked about not only scaling what works, but working at scale. +1 change, or what we call as +1 thinking, which is strangely familiar and yet mind-opening at scale, really works. And now where we are entering into an altered future, I think it's time for us to apply that thinking to three important facets. How do we reimagine responsibility of the different actors of the society, the government, the civil society, the private sector, because there will be change in responsibilities in the world that we enter. How do we reimagine or rethink the responsiveness? And most importantly, how do we reimagine, rethink the resilience? So what are those routines that can make the system more responsible, more responsive, and more resilient? And doing a +1 change at scale, sometimes leveraging technology, sometimes leveraging networks of people, sometimes leveraging different kinds of policy and norm structures. But the important thing is, how do we orchestrate this layer by layer by layer change at scale is what I believe is an important question. And we are experiencing that as we work in different sectors. The urban work that we do has now scaled to more than 1,000 cities. And again, the same question, how do you change one thing at scale, doing the second thing at scale, and keep doing that again and again? We call them the +1 thinking cycles, because that is the change that sticks. A +100 on 5 schools never sticks. A +1 on 1,000,000 schools sticks. And then you figure out what's the next +1. So I would pause here. I'm sure this will, and I've seen a lot of this actually in the history of Tostan, by the way. Elena is, of course, also here. When you look at the work that you've been doing, changing the world a step at a time, I think has been amazingly demonstrated by the work you do at Tostan, because that's how beliefs and norms change at scale. So let me pause here. And Sybil, you have some amazing perspectives on how you've been working on the women's empowerment area and changing the beliefs and norms. So over to you. What have you been saying?
Yeah, thank you, Sanjay. I totally agree with your +1 thinking and this quest that you're undertaking. Maybe from my experience, community-driven, citizen-driven efforts help cultivate the necessary pathways for norm shifts to truly take hold in a sustainable manner. It isn't just about working on the individual, a woman and her negotiation skills, but also looking to the gatekeepers and power holders in the most remote rural locations to walk on the multifaceted journey of understanding why certain harmful social norms and beliefs are upheld. And just like you, Sanjay, organizations such as Tostan, or even those working with savings groups, I'm aligned with that thinking, take that journey with the communities. To perhaps shift to a more current example of beliefs and social practice shifts scaled sustainably for systems change, let's look to the news. And this really resonates, I think, with the work that Tostan has been doing over the years. So recently we heard on May 1st that Sudan banned female genital mutilation across their country. And through Tostan's efforts in Senegal, we know that a law passed at the highest level is often not enough. Newsweek reports that female genital mutilation has continued unabated in many communities as an underground practice due to long-held, though wholly baseless, cultural beliefs regarding cleanliness and virginity. Even in the UK, with its highly developed human rights and legal structure, only one successful prosecution has been brought. So FGM is notoriously difficult to prosecute, with a culture of fear and secrecy protecting perpetrators and failing their victims. The World Economic Forum report, The Case for Gender Equality, highlights that studies have shown that a 1-year increase in health expectancy could raise GDP by up to 4%. We all know the complications that FGM causes for women. Once cut, these are lifelong and debilitating consequences, preventing women from their full economic participation. So the news out of Sudan reminds us that citizens and communities themselves must, and sometimes on their own way, find ways to change the long-held practices and beliefs. And small social norm shifts, such as this one at the community level, can have contributing power to the overall system change sought for women. However, tackling beliefs and social norms is one of the biggest barriers to system change. Changing beliefs and practices take time. It takes education, knowledge, and leadership. Community empowerment initiatives that look at providing the space, knowledge, and engagement of key traditional, local, and religious leaders provide, in my opinion, the greatest opportunity for social norms to be shifted. They empower their communities to lift themselves, enabling their voice to be heard by local government and other leaders, and build strong bonds of social cohesion, which is fundamental in African societies. So putting a focus on, oops, my notes disappeared. So putting a focus on addressing beliefs and norms that exist in communities can help make lasting changes that also promote adoption and scale. And for me, the sustainable aspect can only happen by building the capacity of all citizens to use a lens to apply to any scenario, challenge, or asymmetries in human development that presents itself. And in Tostan, we know they use the lens of human dignity, and that has shown to resonate across cultures and help communities tackle a number of asymmetries that present themselves even 10 years down the road. So I do think fundamentally, in terms of social norm shifts, it's not something that can be done from the top down. Rather, it's something that needs to be done in concert with policies, laws, and systems that currently exist, and really looking at communities trying to rethink and reimagine their societies for development, for change, for growth. So thank you. Back over to you, Elena.